Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in a surprise turn of events, Niantic has unleashed the monster that is Annihilate upon the Pokemon Go world one day early. If you restart your phone right now, you can equip Primeape as your buddy, defeat 30 Ghost or Psychic Pokemon, and evolve it into Annihilate. Annihilate is instant meta in the Great League and the Ultra League, completely redefining the meta as we know it, as it is now the king counter user in both those leagues. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's take a look at some practice battles in the Open Great League featuring Annihilate. Hopping into the first match, and we lead into a massive core breaker, leading Lickitung into Mandibuzz. I save switch into Poliwrath. My opponent is going to respond with Cresselia. So far, things could not be going much worse than they are in this matchup. My Scald connects, and I do get an attack drop, which is quite nice. This attack drop means that as my opponent fires off their charge attack here, I will be able to hang on and make it to a second Scald. This is not going to be enough to knock out, but it will put it into range where I can get a pretty nice farm down with my Lickitung. I'm going to send in the Lickitung. I need to get rid of the Cresselia and then hope that 2-Shield Annihilate is going to be able to sweep in the back. I'm going to get a very nice farm here, and my opponent, odds are they're going to be sending back in the Mandibuzz. Back in comes the Mandibuzz, they're firing off energy, and I'm not going to be shielding here. They go for the Dark Pulse, that does quite a lot of damage. I'm continuing to farm up with the Lickitung and firing off the Body Slam. Body Slams will do valuable chip damage here. The Body Slam is going to connect. I'm going for yet another Body Slam, continuing to apply pressure onto the Mandibuzz. I'm just trying to get this thing as low as possible, and then trusting in Annihilate to close this out. I'm going to let this through. Opponent goes for the Aerial Ace, that will not KO. I make it to another Body Slam. My opponent, I believe, does have an Aerial Ace stored now. The Body Slam connects. It's a simultaneous switch. Annihilate into Lickitung. Lickitung is normally the Pokemon that destroys all Ghost types, but guess what? Annihilate beats it in the 0 shield and the 2 shield, and here, I believe my opponent was short of a Power Whip, so I let it go. It is just going to be the Body Slam, and look at how well this thing is tanking licks. It's applying a ton of pressure with Ice Punches. The Ice Punch is going to be shielded by the opponent, and now my opponent is going to try and farm down, but they realize they can't. They have 2 moves on the Lickitung and a move on the Mandibuzz, but it's not going to matter. Annihilate wins CMP over the Mandibuzz. So despite an incredibly tough game where it felt like we were counted on the lead, swap, and closer, 2-Shield Annihilate completely sweeps the endgame and takes the win. Moving into the next match, leading Lickitung into an opposing Annihilate. So this is going to be a bit uncomfortable for me as I can't really switch in Poliwrath. Poliwrath does do very poorly into Annihilate due to the fact that Annihilate does have that Ghost subtyping, which means it's going to be double resisting counters from opposing fighters. The Power Whip is going to connect. I'm going to farm up, switch when they make it to the Ice Punch, and catch it on the Poliwrath. Because I know that Annihilate does win zeros. My opponent tries to play the zeros, but this way, I can just make a catch and save the Lickitung in case I need it later in the game. My opponent is going to fire after 7 jabs here, so this is just going to be the Acid Spray, and the Acid Spray harshly reduces my defense, which means they're going to have a lot easier time getting rid of my Poliwrath. But I do get an attack drop with a Scald, which is quite nice. My opponent is forced to fire off energy here. I believe that I would barely be able to survive an Acid Spray, so my opponent will go for the Scald, and now I'm going for the aggressive play. I'm going for the 1-shield counter down with Annihilate. Due to the Ghost subtyping, these poison jabs are doing absolutely nothing to Annihilate. I shield up the Scald, opponent sends in Shadow Dragonair, and watch this. Watch, Annihilate, despite not being the tankiest thing around, can survive 1 turn fast move pressure pretty well. I'm able to build up to 2 more Ice Punches. At this point, my opponent can't shield because they know that I have the back-to-back, and I'm just going to be able to pick up a knockout here, so they just have to let this go. But it's a fighter that, due to its pretty decent HP stat, can do okay there. Opponent sends in their own Annihilate, I switch into the Lickitung, I'm able to snipe and farm down the Tentacruel. Moving into the next match, picking up a very nice lead, Lickitung into Azumarill. Despite the fact that Lickitung does have the edge on paper, Azumarill can still make this very, very close in the 0 shield. That bubble buff from the start of the season definitely does come in handy. I'm able to land the Power Whip, which is quite nice. My opponent is going to be able to make it to 2 play roughs before I make it to my next move. Honestly, I've gotten them low enough that I kind of want to just store this energy and aggressively switch into the Poliwrath. This is low enough that some counters plus a Scald will probably be able to knock out, and I want to see if they have a secondary counter to fighters, and my opponent is going to send in Trevenant. So I'm very happy that I switched out here. I'm able to bait out the Trevenant, fire off an Icy Wind, and get a debuff. This means that a Seed Bomb is no longer going to be able to knock me out. They're firing off energy, that's perfectly okay with me. They're going for the Seed Bomb. It does not knock out, and I'm able to get my next Icy Wind. This Icy Wind will easily pick up the KO. My opponent is going to commit a shield and instead go for a farm down. They leave with a lot of energy, but I can force them to throw energy by bringing in Lickitung and clicking on the Power Whip. They do win charge attack priority, but I'm fine. I'm letting this go. I'm trusting in Annihilate. Annihilate is going to look and try and go for a double resisted counter down here. Let's see what they have in the back. It's Registeel, and this is super playable for Annihilate. I'm farming up. I'm firing off the Shadow Ball. This is going to do a massive amount of neutral damage onto the Registeel, getting Registeel deep into the red, and it's charge attack priority to the Zap Cannon. The Zap Cannon will be shielded. I'm going for the counter down here, and I do leave with quite a lot of energy. This game is going to come down to a bait or a no shielded nuke. I'm farming up. I decide to go for the bait here, because if they shield this, I can make the Shadow Ball, but the opponent calls the bait. What a play by my opponent. As you see, I do make the Shadow Ball on charge attack priority, so if they shielded that, I could have pulled out a win, but a masterful bait call by my opponent means that unfortunately, it's game over for me. Moving into the next match, leading Lickitung into Charjabug. Pretty decent matchup for the Lickitung. Definitely not too upset to see the Charjabug on the lead, considering that I do have that Poliwrath lurking in the back. I'm firing off the Body Slam. Body Slam is going to be no-shielded by my opponent. Lickitung does win the zeros and the ones here, so I'm perfectly fine with just playing this out. X-Scissor is going to connect. My opponent decides to overfarm, and I decide to get a little creative with it. So I decide to catch an X-Scissor onto Poliwrath. Now, Poliwrath does not have a great matchup here, but I'm able to waste their energy a little bit, and these counters are definitely adding up. At this point, I was a little worried about a discharge, so I do shield. They go for the X-Scissor bait, which is a bit unfortunate for me. I'm going for this Icy Wind, and the question will be, how much do they value this low health Charjabug? They're going to let that through, and they're going to send in Whiscash. Whiscash farming up energy here. I'm able to make it to the Scald. Let's see if I can get that Scald debuff. It is a 50-50 chance. The Scald is shielded. I do get the debuff, so a bit of luck does go my way in this matchup. My opponent will go for the Mud Bomb. Mud Bomb not going to KO, and my opponent leaves with a lot of energy, but they leave debuffed. I'm farming up. Opponent tries to go for a catch onto Lickitung, and now we have Annihilate versus Lickitung. Annihilate, as I mentioned, does win the zeros and the 2 shield versus Lickitung. And the nice thing is, in the 2s, if you shield a Power Whip, in the 1s, if you shield a Power Whip, you win as Annihilate. And this is with neutral charge attacks, going for Ice Punch and then the super effective counters. Like, my opponent is going to make it to a last second move, but it is not the Power Whip, it is just the Body Slam. And now I'm in just a fantastic position to win this game. This Pokemon is amazing. The Ice Punch bait gets the shield. They're forced to throw energy here, and then I can just combo into the Power Whip from the Lickitung. In comes the Lickitung. No shields remaining for my opponent, and the Power Whip does mean game over. We see a bit of a tough lead in the next match, Lickitung into Skarmory. I'm going to save switch into Poliwrath. My opponent is going to bank a bunch of energy and send in their own Annihilate. And this is a Pokemon, I am so serious. You are going to be seeing this absolutely everywhere. This is instant top meta. This thing is so good. My opponent did give me a pretty sizable energy head start as the Poliwrath. And Poliwrath, with enough of an energy head start, does potentially have play here. I'm going to be firing off the Scald. The Scald is going to be no-shielded by my opponent, and I go 2 for 2 on Scald debuffs. My debuff luck has been very, very good here. I'm going to no-shield. It is going to be the Ice Punch, and the Ice Punch barely does not KO. So with an energy lead and 2 for 2 Scald debuffs, I'm able to flip the 1s, but that's still not something I would rely on in any meaningful capacity. I send in the Lickitung just to absorb energy. They go for the Brave Bird, and it's another Lickitung in the back. Again, this is a Ghost-type Pokemon. Lickitung is supposed to be the destroyer of Ghost types, but this is what makes Annihilate absolutely unbelievable, is its ability to win the 1s here. If you do shield the Power Whip and win the 0s and 2s, regardless. I shield the Power Whip, they're only going to make it to a Body Slam. We're seeing this play out very consistently here, and the Body Slam, that's just not gonna cut it. My opponent, oh, this is gonna be close. I don't have a lot of HP. They have a call to make. Do they call the bait? Do they shield it? They call the bait. I'm able to land the Shadow Ball, and a couple licks from the Lickitung are going to give me the win. Moving into the next match, leading Lickitung into Annihilate. Again, I'm going to be staying in this matchup for the most part, because with the typical moveset of Ice Punch and Shadow Ball, I should be pretty okay to tank a move, but my opponent makes a really, really nice play. They bank a ton of energy on Annihilate and switch in Deoxys, and I can't really afford to switch out. That's a really nice play by my opponent, as nothing in my backline wants to deal with a Shadow Ball from an Annihilate. This thing hits very, very hard. They're going to be firing off energy. I'm just going to let this through. It is going to be the Thunderbolt, and now I send in the Poliwrath to look for the counter down. Poliwrath, I mean, they make it to a Psycho Boost, but I can tank a Psycho Boost. I'm just going to trust in Annihilate to try and win this game for me. My opponent, are they going to be sending back in the Annihilate? They do. They don't throw the energy, so they're just looking for a counter down. What this means, I'm going to have to switch. The Scald does get shielded. I send in my own Annihilate, and it comes down to this. Do I call a bait? Do I shield a nuke? I call the bait, and it's the Ice Punch. Maybe there's a chance. If I don't call that bait, I just lose on the spot. Their Annihilate has way too much energy. They're baiting again. I continue to farm. I believe this is only going to be an Ice Punch, so I should be able to let this through. And now I'm going to continue to farm. Opponent in the back, they have their own Poliwrath, and I'm firing off the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball, massive damage to the Poliwrath. And here, I should just be able to win this by fully committing to the counter farm down. So I am going to get a full farm down. I do have to shield up what's probably going to be the Icy Wind, as they want the guaranteed debuff. And here, I make a mistake. I should have just full sent the Shadow Ball. I called a bait earlier. Now it's my opponent's time. And it looks like they might be able to farm me down. I switch into the Poliwrath, and I'm able to snipe. Moving into the next match, we see a very familiar lead here, the Lickitung into the Charge-a-Bug. And again, this is perfectly fine for the Lickitung. Considering I have the Poliwrath in the back, I definitely don't mind playing this out. The Body Slam is going to connect. They make it to 2 X Scissors before I make my second Body Slam, but I can survive this, so I'm not too worried about it. They go for X Scissor number 1, and there's X Scissor number 2. Again, I'm just going to no shield, look to overfarm, and then go for a Body Slam to pick up a knockout. I continue to farm. Opponent is going to send in Poliwrath. I'm able to make it to a Power Whip. I'm looking to deal massive damage or grab a shield, and I've grabbed a shield. In comes Annihilate. Annihilate, farming up. This is only an Icy Wind, so I am going to let this through. My opponent didn't build up to the Scald. Icy Wind, of course, does get the guaranteed attack drop, but watch this. Even with the attack drop, the counter damage plus the Shadow Ball, it still KOs here. This thing is unbelievable. In the back, it's Lantern. Keep in mind, I'm debuffed here. So I'm going for a debuffed Shadow Ball, and it still does about half of Lantern's HP. This Pokemon is crazy. Please evolve it. As I mentioned, you can, after you restart your app, put Primeape as your buddy, and then you have to defeat 30 Ghost or Psychic types in battle. So you could even just grab a friend and then just do 10 friendly battles and have them run like 10 CP Ghost or 10 CP Psychic Pokemon, and then you can evolve it, because this thing is unbelievable. Back in comes the Lantern. At this point, they're probably surfing me, but the counter damage is too valuable to pass up, so I can just commit the shield and then just go for the full counter down with the Poliwrath and take that game. Hopping into the final match, we do see Lickitung into the Pelipper. So I'm definitely happy to catch the Pelipper on the lead, considering what I do have in the back. I'm farming up energy and going for the Body Slam. One move does not knock out a Pelipper here. Pelipper will be able to withstand this damage, so they are going to let that through. Pelipper has a lot of energy here. I know I can tank whatever they throw. Annihilate, I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. And here, I could have brought in the Poliwrath, but for science, we're bringing in the Annihilate. Due to the Ghost fighting typing, it only takes neutral from Dark. Watch this. Would you believe me if I told you that Annihilate wins the Zeros versus Umbreon? Look at this. I'm able to land the Ice Punch. I can no-shield this, and I can make it to another Ice Punch before they make it to a move. I end up deciding to just go for a counter down, but as you can see, I had the Ice Punch there. I could have clicked it and just won the Zeros straight up. This Pokemon is absolutely unbelievable. Opponent sends in the Pelipper. I'm firing off the Ice Punch. Unfortunately, it looks like my opponent had 1 turn lag there, so they did not get the Wing Attack through, which is very unfortunate. I switch into the Lickitung, and in the back, it is going to be the Galarian Stunfisk. The Power Whip is going to connect. From here, I'm perfectly fine with just tanking an Earthquake and getting a big farm on the Poliwrath, and that should just be game winning for me. But they go for a Rock Slide, and this actually makes my life a lot more difficult. Had they just gone for a Quake and knocked out, I would have gotten a ton of farm on the Poliwrath, but now I don't get a lot of farm on the Poliwrath, so I think I'm going to need a catch to try and win this game. They're going to go for the Rock Slide to pick up the KO. I'm going to send in the Poliwrath. they're firing off energy. I believe this is only going to be a rock slide, and then switch clocks up. It's back into the Pelipper. It'll come down to a catch. I'm farming up, and I do get the catch onto Annihilate there. There was a little bit of stutter, so I was worried, but I do manage to get the catch, and from here, I should just be able to shield once and counter all the way down. My opponent is going to go for the Hail Mary Hurricane, and they do end up resigning the match. All in all, as I mentioned, this is a must-have Pokemon for the Great League and the Ultra League. I do also want to try it in Masters. It should still be solid in Masters, but this thing is top meta in Great League and Ultra League. They did this Pokemon justice. It's unbelievable. You are going to want to get one. It has very similar stats to something like a Swampert. So it's not super bulky, but it hits quite hard, and they did an amazing job with the moveset. So please, if you do one thing today in the Pokemon Go app, evolve Primeape to Annihilate, because this Pokemon is unbelievable. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.